All right, we're gonna start with A card. So we got the walk up. On lights at the top, not bent, broke, or cracked, and properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. Proper color is amber. Also, not missing any bulbs. Function is marker lights. My mirror brackets, not bent, broke, or cracked, it's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. My mirrors, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, adjusted to me, the driver, and they are clean and clear. My turn signal four-way flasher marker lights, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. Proper color is amber. My high beams and my low beams are not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. Proper color is clear. My license plate, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts, and it's up to date. Let's take a step back. I'm gonna talk, the truck is not leaning from left to right, which would indicate low tire pressure. Also, I have no puddles, which would indicate a blown hose. Also, there's no exposed wires. Now I'm gonna come and I'm gonna open this up. All right, I'm gonna come over here. First thing I'm gonna talk about is my fuel tank. It's not been broken, cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts, no leaks. My fuel tank straps, not been broken, cracked, properly mounted, not missing any bolts or screws. My rubber seal is present, prevents metal to metal contact. Also, my cap is tight. Then I'm gonna open the door and I'm gonna talk about my windshield washer reservoir. It's not been broken, cracked. It's properly mounted. It's not missing any screws or bolts. Also, no leaks. And if I were to check it, it should be between the add and fill or standard operating levels. Also, my cap is tight. Then I'm gonna come on this side. I'm gonna do an overview of all my hoses. Any hoses that I see, there's no abrasion, boulders, or cuts. They're properly mounted. They're not missing any clamps, and there's no leaks. Also, any wires that I see, any wires. My wires are not ripped, torn, or frayed. They're properly mounted, not missing any clamps. Now I'm going to talk about my coolant reservoir. It's not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. It's not missing any screws or bolts. No leaks. Also, my cap is tight. And if I were to check, I should have between the add and fill or standard operating levels. Also, my alternator right here is not bent, broken, cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. Let's see, my belt, when pushed in, I should not have more than 3/4 of an inch of play. So we did our overview on our hoses and our wires. So technically, we don't need to do an overview on the alternator wires. Good on that. So then we can talk about our water pump, just right here. I'll go right here, my water pump. It's not bent, broken, cracked. It's properly mounted. It's not missing any screws or bolts. It's not leaking. Also, it's belt driven. And I would check my belt. I would push it in. I should not have more than 3/4 of an inch of play. All right, so that's all for this side. So now we go to the other side. Go to the other side. And me, I'm going to start over here. I'm going to do an overview of all of my hoses once again. All of my hoses, any hoses I see. Remember, these right here we have to do again, separate. So any of my hoses, same thing. No abrasion, boulders, or cuts. No, they're properly mounted, not missing any clamps. And then once again over here, all of my wires, any wires I see, any wires. They're not ripped, torn, or frayed. They're properly mounted, not missing any clamps or screws for that matter. You can add screws. So then I'm going to start here with my oil cap. My oil cap, it's not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, no leaks. Or we can just say my oil cap is tight. My dipstick, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. And if I were to check it, I would remove it, wipe it off, reinsert it, take it out, and it should be between the add and fill or standard operating levels. So then I'm going to go here, talk about my power steering reservoir. It's not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted right there, not missing any screws or bolts. My cap is tight. Also, if I were to check it, I should have at least, no, I should be between the add and fill or standard operating levels. Then I'm going to go here and talk about this is my air compressor. Not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. It has no leaks, and it's gear driven. So once we get done with that, we can come down here. We can talk about our power steering pump right here. Not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. It's not leaking, and it's gear driven. So then I'm gonna come over here and talk about my air hoses. My air hoses, there's no abrasion, bolts, or cuts. They're properly mounted, not missing any clamps, and there's no leaks. Also, my fittings are not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted, no leaks. So once I get done with that, I'm gonna go right here. I'm gonna talk about my steering shaft, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted. My U joints, upper and lower, are not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted. There's no, oh no, they're properly greased. Don't forget that. Also, if I were to check my steering shaft, I should not have more than 10 degrees of play. Then I'm gonna go down to my gearbox. My gearbox, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts, has no leaks, and it's gear driven. My pitman arm, drag link, steering knuckle, and then my tie rod, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any cotter pins or castle nuts. My bushing right here, my bushing, no abrasion, bolts, or cuts, and it's properly greased. So then don't forget about the frame right here. My frame, it's not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. It's not missing any screws or bolts, and no illegal welds. Then I'm gonna jump on my suspension, my upper and lower control arm. I'm sorry, not control arm. Leaf spring mount. My bad. Leaf spring mount, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. And then my leaf spring, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. Yep, not scissoring or shifted. My U bolts, not bent, broke, or cracked. Properly mounted, not missing any bolts. And then we're gonna go here. My upper and lower shock absorber mount is not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. My shock absorber itself, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, no leaks. We're all done with suspension. So now we're gonna jump over here on the brakes. So my air brake hose, there's no abrasion, bolts, or cuts. It's properly mounted, not missing any clamps. My ABS wire, not ripped, torn, or frayed, properly mounted, not missing any clamps. My brake chamber, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts, not missing any clamps, and it has no leaks. My push rod and my slack adjuster, push rod slack adjuster, not right here, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any cotter pins or screws or bolts, any of that stuff. Also, if I were to check, I would disengage my brakes, and I should not have more than an inch of free play. And don't forget, we can chalk the wheels too. So once we get done with that, we go straight down to our brake liner. My brake liner is not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. There's no oil or debris. Also, if I were to check it, I should have no less than a 1/4 inch of liner. And then we go to our brake drum. Brake drum is right here. Not bent, broke, or cracked. Properly mounted. No illegal welds. Then I'm going to go to my inner, outer rim. Not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted. No illegal welds. My inner, outer sidewall. No abrasion, bolts, or cuts. No leaks. My tire face. It's wearing evenly. Has no abrasion, bolts, or cuts. It has no leaks. If I were to check it, my tire tread should be at least 430 seconds, and they cannot be recaps or retreads. It has to be a virgin tire. Then I'm going to go down to my lug nuts. My lug nuts, they're not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted. All are present. No excessive rust or shiny spots, which would indicate looseness or tightness. My hub oil seal, not bent, broke, or cracked. It's properly mounted right there. We see not missing any bolts or screws. There's no leaks. And if I were to check it, it should be between the add and fill or standard operating levels. And when we talk about our valve stem, remember it's metal, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted, not missing any bolts, and no leaks. And if I were to check the tire, I should have at least 100 PSI. So we just did A, the walk up, and then we did all of our engine components, the braking system, also suspension. So that concludes A. So now we go back. Well, it doesn't conclude A. We still got to do all this back here. We got our emergency and service air hoses. There's no abrasion, bolts, or cuts. There's no leaks. My fittings right here on both ends are present. They're not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted. No leaks. My glad hands, not bent, broke, or cracked, properly mounted. No leaks. The rubber seal on the inside. No abrasion, bolts, or cuts. No leaks. And then we can talk about my electric line right here. So not ripped, torn, or frayed. It's properly mounted. Has no exposed wires. My safety latch on both ends are present. They're not bent, broke, or cracked. They're properly mounted, not missing any screws or bolts. There's no corrosion. The pins on the inside are not bent, broke, or cracked. Also, my hoses and lines should not be touching any part of the catwalk. They should not be crossed. Also, I should have enough slack to make turns. And then we talk about our catwalk. It's not bent, broke, or cracked. Properly mounted. Not missing any screws or bolts. It can't hold my weight. No oil or debris. And then we come back here and we talk about everything. It's on the other side on this one, but we talk about everything on our fifth wheel. We got the fifth wheel platform, got the mounting bolts. We got our fifth wheel. This is the skid plate platform right here. Apron is at the top. We got our pivot pin right here. And then we have our safety latch right over here. We pre-trip all of that. And then, of course, we have our kingpin inside and our locking jaw. And remember, no daylight between my apron and my skid plate. I think that's everything on the fifth wheel. So remember, and also we have to talk about, I have enough space to my mud flap, to my landing gear to make turns. So we just finished A, the walk up, all the engine components, the braking system, suspension, and then we did coupling. And remember, the last thing on coupling is right here. My mud flap to my landing gear. I have enough space to make turns. So we'll continue at the next one later.